This is Real Estate Rookie episode 161.
Oh, how are you going to get loans if you don't have a W-2? You're never going to be able to buy anything. And I feel like that's a huge myth and just not true. Yes, you have to sacrifice a little bit on your 30-year fix versus 5/1 ARM and maybe some points, maybe higher interest rate. But am I going to let that completely stop me? No.
My name is Ashley Kerr, and I have a story. Today, I am actually in Seattle at the Heat and Daynard office. So if anybody is looking to invest in Seattle, I highly recommend checking them out. No, this is not a paid advertisement. I'm just using their office for free to record a podcast and playing with the cool things they have in the office. So,
and apparently they have medieval. Yeah. Yeah, Ashley's holding a sword that looks like it's from like Game of Thrones or something right now. So I'm very nervous for all the people in that office with you.
I know. So I am here with my co-host, Tony Robinson. Tony, you got any weapons in your office?
The only weapon I've got is, I don't know, I've got a gallon-sized water bottle next to me and a fork that I use to eat my lunch, so I could maybe do some damage with that. But
you can waterboard.
Yeah. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we're actually not a podcast about medieval warfare and weapons of times past. We're a real estate focused podcast that shows new investors how to get started. We give you the inspiration, the information, the education you need to get started in real estate investing. So actually, I'm excited. You're like a globetrotter right now, right? You're in Tennessee with me last week. Now 3 days later, you're in Seattle. What's next on the agenda? Where are you going to next?
Next, I think I'm actually coming back to Seattle at the end of the month, but a super exciting moment for me today. I am investing in my first out-of-state property. So here in Seattle, I'm going to be doing a house flip and partnering with James Daynard from Heat and Daynard. So that's why I'm out here doing my first look at the property, going over the rehab for it, and writing a check.
Awesome. You're going to share on your story what the property looks like, yeah? I'm excited to see what...
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, okay. And it's actually not that bad. I've toured a couple of properties here in Seattle before that have been like hoarder houses and different things like that. Actually, James was just showing us a video of a house he bought that had actually been on an episode of Hoarders. So if you guys Google Seattle hoarder house, you guys might be able to watch that episode on A&E.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. Actually, I'm excited to see your first out-of-state flip. How often do you think you'll have to go back to Seattle to kind of manage this project?
So I'm coming back during the middle of rehab, and then I'm coming back at the end, towards the end of it when it gets listed for sale to see the finished product. So just
you make it sound so easy. You make it sound so easy.
That's how it should be, right? We will see. We'll see how it goes. So I'll keep everyone updated. You can follow me on Instagram at Wealth from Rentals and check out James at JDaneFlips on Instagram too to kind of see this journey of our first joint venture together.
Yeah, I'm excited for you guys. Well,
so
man, I feel like I don't.
What's new with you?
Yeah, I feel like I don't have an update as cool as yours. I definitely don't have any medieval weapons in my office with me right now. But what's new with me? We're actually closing on another flip tomorrow, so that's exciting. We're trying to ramp up that part of our business. And again, we're still selling these like short-term rental turnkey flips. So that way, whoever buys them can kind of take them live on day one. So excited to kind of grow that part of our business. We're actually just added 2 new folks to our team as well. So the Alpha Key Capital team. So shout out to Warren and Brian. They're coming on to help us with acquisitions. So as we kind of ramp up our need for deal flow, they're gonna run point on that. So exciting week for us at the Alpha Key Capital team.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely adding more team members, taking some, work off your shoulders and hopefully providing you a ton of value, and exciting for them to get to work with you and learn from you too.
Yeah, I hope it's a mutually beneficial relationship. But yeah, I think things are good. But the best part is I got to hang out with Ashley Kerr for 2 days, 3 days in Tennessee. So that's always a good time.
Yeah, that was so fun. And it was awesome to finally get to see one of your properties in person and get to stay there in the cabin. So thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, of course. So your bill for the lodging, it'll be coming to you soon. So just keep an eye on your inbox. All right.
I'll make sure to leave a review too.
Yeah. All right, so should we get into today's guest? Today we had Grace Gudenkauf on the podcast, and Grace is an investor based out of Cedar Falls, Iowa. And I really enjoyed this episode. Grace she's a younger investor, 24 years old, just recently graduated from college. I think she said like a year and a half ago, and she's scaled to almost 20 units in less than a year, which is super, super cool, super amazing. So she kind of breaks down what that journey looks like. But honestly, actually, like one of my favorite parts of this episode was when she talks about her decision to leave her job and kind of what her thought process was behind that. So I'm really enjoyed that part of the conversation.
That was my favorite part too. And just how she gives some actionable steps as to if you are thinking of doing the same thing, quitting your job and jumping into real estate full time, like here's some things you should think about before you actually do that. Grace, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you start off with telling everyone a little bit about yourself and how you got started in real estate?
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm super excited. I am Grace Gudenkauf. I'm a 24-year-old investor from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where I was born and raised. And I got started in real estate last fall because my boyfriend had flipped a house while I was still in college, and I had just started my full-time job, and I was really looking for ways to maximize my new salary, and it kind of fell into my lap.
So, Grace, what did you think when he flipped a house? Was real estate investing anything you even knew about, and how did that conversation happen?
I just remember doing like purchase price plus rehab, and then the difference with the sale price and being like, ooh, that's good. Like I had no clue all the things that went into it. And I went and I painted some, but like, I remember thinking like, this is a good idea and I'll do it eventually, but it wasn't like alarm bells going off yet.
Before we dig into too much of your story, can you just give us real quick an overview of your portfolio, what it looks like today and what kind of investing you have done?
Yeah, so all of my units are in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We have 17 doors between, I think, 8 properties, some single family, some duplexes, and a couple fourplexes. And we've done all over the place, like huge rehabs, cosmetic, rent to own, creative, pretty much everything we've done except for flipping and short-term rentals.
So you said that you're at 17 doors across several different properties, but you said you started last fall, so like a little over a year into this. Is that timeline correct?
Yes, we bought our first single family rental February of 2021.
Wow, that's awesome. What great growth. And not even a year, right? Like it hasn't even been a whole year yet, right? So you keep saying we, Grace. So who is this we that you're speaking of?
Yes, so we is I always say my business partner / life partner, Brant, and that's my boyfriend. And we've partnered together on everything.
Gotcha. So let's talk a little bit more about this journey because, to go from kind of falling into this first flip that your boyfriend did to now, having a pretty sizable portfolio, like there's got to be a lot that happens in 11 months to be able to make that work. So after this first flip, like what happens after that? Like, are you guys just, like you're on fire? I guess just walk us through that journey of what happens after that first flip.
Yeah, so he got the money from that first flip, and I think he was kind of looking for the next thing to do, and I was like, well, it's going to be winter in Iowa, so let's do a flip together. I've got nothing else to do, literally. And we ended up actually buying something together. We put 20% down, and we were going to burr a full gut property, and so we started that first one in February, and then took us 6 months and we had to DIY the whole thing because we had some money, but not like a crazy amount of money. And then from there, I was just like, this is such a good idea. I have to keep doing this. And we just decided that we'll never let the money stop us. We will always get the deal and then find the money. And it's turned into where we're at now.
I just want to pause on that one point, Grace, because what you said I think was very profound. I want to make sure we don't pass over that. But you said that you'll never let the money stop you, and if you find a good deal, you're going to get it under contract, and you'll kind of figure it out afterwards. I think there's a lot of people who are afraid to go down that same path because they might see a good deal, but they're too afraid to lock it up because they haven't figured out the financing. So just kind of walk us through your thought process on A, how you haven't let that fear stop you, and then B, like, how are you funding all of these deals? Because I think when someone hears you go from 0 to almost 20 units in less than a year, people can't comprehend how you're able to finance that. So start with how you broke past that fear, and then give us some tactical knowledge on how you actually made it happen.
So of course, if somebody scales that quickly in that short amount of time, it's really important to understand that there are other partners, private money lenders, whatever, equity partners out there that are making that happen more than likely. And for us, that's absolutely true. I remember I probably heard it from a Bigger Pockets podcast, someone saying, I'm not going to let the money stop me. Like, I'm going to find it. And I just like regurgitated that. And it started just with like the very next deal we did was 2 duplexes, and they were $255,000. And so that would have been like $50,000 of down payment, and we didn't have that. So I called my small local bank, and that probably had like 30 employees. And I went straight to the VP and I was like, hey, this is a really good deal. I've banked here forever. Let me put 10% down. And he basically got the underwriter on the phone, and they decided right then and there that they'd let us put 10% down. I was like, the tenants have been here forever. They've never missed rent payment. These are really worth more like $300. So like, you have no risk. And then I went and I partnered with Brant and my sister to split that 10% down payment in 3 ways. And then each one moving forward was just all different. And I feel like I just figured it out as I went.
That is so awesome that you went to the VP of the bank, and that's the power of these small local banks, and that you asked, like, what's the worst they can say is no, but putting yourself out there and asking those questions, and not even asking, you knew exactly what you needed, what you wanted, but even going to these banks and asking, what can you offer me too? It obviously was a very powerful tool for you and kept you moving forward. So when you set up this new partnership with your boyfriend and your sister, what did that look like? Did you guys put together an LLC? Did you keep it in your personal name? How did you structure that?
So we should have put it in an LLC, but we actually took title as tenants in common, with 2/3 being Brant and I's LLC and the other third being her personal name, because I think we might have done that because we needed her W-2 to help qualify for that. I can't quite remember, or maybe it was timing and we just didn't get our stuff together to create a new LLC, but that was the last one that went into any personal names. And from then on out, we've always put everything into an LLC.
Can you explain for anyone that doesn't know the difference between like putting in your personal name or putting it in an LLC? What are the risks and what are the reasons that you have transitioned from personal name to LLC?
Yeah, so we really wanted to get our commercial lending, I guess, relationship started. So we kind of just skipped the whole residential loans, which are going to give you 30-year terms and depend on your W-2 and your credit score and be just super favorable. You probably also are going to have to put 20 to 30% down. Whereas, like I said, we didn't have a ton of money, so we knew that we needed to stretch basically every give that we could get. So we went to more favorable or to lower down payment commercial loans where we could do 10 or 20%. Granted, they're going to be a little higher interest rate and they're going to be less favorable in terms of how long the loan is. So residential loans are going to be a lot more favorable in terms of interest rate and amortization, and they're going to depend on your credit score, your W-2, and all of the personal information about you, whereas a commercial loan is going to be more focused on the property itself, and it's probably going to be higher interest and less favorable in terms of amortization, but they're more flexible in terms of down payment.
Can we just drill down a little bit on the commercial lending process? I think just one comment to make is that it's definitely not necessary as a first-time investor to set up an LLC and go the commercial route. but depending on your unique situation, sometimes it may make more sense. So I just want to caution folks that are listening that don't feel like you can't go out and get that first deal until you get an LLC and have the commercial lending set up. You can go out and still do it in your personal name. The vast majority of the deals that I'm in, it's in my personal name or one of my partner's personal name. We've still been able to scale our portfolio. But Grace, I want to talk a little bit about what that commercial lending process looks like, because I think a lot of folks might have some interest in that. So when you say that it doesn't depend on like your W-2 or it doesn't depend on some other things, like what exactly is it that they're using to qualify a commercial loan versus like a loan in someone's personal name? What documentation do you need to provide? Like what's the proof they look for to say, okay, this is a good loan?
So when I tell my lender I want a new loan, she wants to know the purchase price, how long it's going to take, the rehab, and then most importantly, what it's going to appraise for and what it's going to rent for if I'm keeping it. Because the bank that I work with particularly is also a small local bank. They're very investor friendly. They're known for being investor friendly. And they always want to know what is the debt service coverage ratio. Or I can never remember the DSCR, whatever. Basically, what's the ratio of your rent to your debt payment? And if it looks good, the loan's good. They don't care if I have my W-2 or if I have an 800 credit score or a 600 credit score. They want to know, can this deal stand on its own legs?
Can we also talk about like the terms that are offered to you with a commercial loan? Like, you know, with a primary residence, you can go out and get a really low interest rate, 30-year fixed term. What kind of terms and rates are you seeing on the commercial side?
Yeah, so again, not as favorable, but we're seeing 4 to 5% with a 5.1 ARM, which I think is pretty standard. Also, that could be good or bad depending on what your end game is. If your end game with the property is only a few years, it doesn't really matter that it's an adjustable rate mortgage or if it's a 30-year loan, because you know you're either going to 1031 it, sell it, or whatever.
Tony, just real quick, what are you seeing on the residential side right now?
Yeah, we just on our most recent short-term rental purchase, we closed at I think at like 3.4% or something like that. And that's a 30-year fixed, you know, so honestly, not a whole heck of a lot lower than 4 or even 5%. So we're talking about, you know, a few $100 per month difference in mortgage payments. So not a huge deal breaker.
The other important thing though, is since neither Brant nor I have a W-2, like a huge thing was, oh, how are you going to get loans if you don't have a W-2? You're never going to be able to buy anything. And I feel like that's a huge myth and just not true. Yes, you have to sacrifice a little bit on your 30-year fix versus 5.1 ARM and maybe some points, maybe higher interest rate. But am I going to let that completely stop me? No.
And if the numbers still work, it can still be a good deal, even though you're not paying a lower interest rate like another investor. That barrier of entry, at least like getting yourself into the deal and making money off of it, even if it's not, you know, a huge amount, like you're still getting your foot in the door and making money instead of having nothing because you never took advantage of that opportunity and even invested at all. So being, you know, having some of that opportunity to invest in the property. And that's almost like the same as taking on a partner, like owning 50% of the property rather than owning 0% of the property is still better.
And that was like a huge thing that I initially struggled with as well. It's, I don't want partners. Well, okay, then exactly like you said, Ashley, 100% of nothing is still nothing.
One follow-up for me, Grace, you mentioned the 5.1 ARM. Or ARM. Can you define what that means for folks that aren't familiar with it and how that differs from a traditional mortgage?
Yes. So the 5.1 ARM means that for 5 years, you have your fixed rate. Like I said, we're seeing between 4 and 5%. And then after that, every year it can be adjusted, hence adjustable rate mortgage. And I heard, I think one time on a Bigger Pockets podcast, that you can look in the fine print and see if there's a maximum interest rate that it can hit and just use that number if you're nervous about that to see if your deal still works. Unfortunately, I could not find that in my deals, but if you can, that's just another tool to use to not be scared of those types of mortgages.
And if you do really have a good deal, you shouldn't have a problem being able to refinance your property too once those 5 years up and go into another 5-year fixed rate loan too.
Mm-hmm.
So Grace, what's next for you guys? So your boyfriend did the flip, and then you guys did the Burr property, and what kind of happens from there? How do you gain that traction to keep buying more and more?
Yeah, I remember we just had a conversation where like, should we just keep buying? Like, should we just see if we can do it? And we're like, yeah, okay, let's do it. And that was like so scary and like so like ludicrous, but we're like, whatever, let's do it. But actually,
did you have a job at this point? Were you working when you were done with school?
Yes. So after I graduated college, I was working as an engineer for an aerospace company, and I was working remotely out of Iowa. And I'd bought my personal residence and the Burr and the 2 duplexes. And right around this time, like spring 2021, I started to realize if I go back into the office, which is California, San Diego, I will never be able to do real estate. Like if I move to San Diego, I will be able to maybe buy a garage. Like Iowa is so low cost of entry. Like it's just so easy to make a dent in this market. So I decided, since I couldn't continue to work remotely forever, that I was just going to make the jump and just try real estate and just see where the heck it went.
So how many properties did you have at that point where you decided to just quit?
I think 5 units, but with 4 of those units being shared between my boyfriend and my sister. So I really did not have that much experience. But I thought, if I'm going to try this, it should be now. I don't have kids. I don't have pets. I don't have student loans and all these other obligations. Like if I'm going to fail, now's the time to fail, not down the road when I have way more people depending on me. And right now, if I really needed to, I could move into my parents' basement. And would that be worth the risk for me to possibly succeed working for myself? Absolutely. So that's how I decided to go for it, which seems so crazy. And it probably was.
For someone listening now that's maybe is in that kind of same dilemma that you were, like you don't want to go into the office, you don't want to be stuck at your W-2 job anymore, and they're thinking of quitting and going full-time into real estate. What are a couple action items or things they should do before they decide to actually quit their job? I mean, did you have some money in savings? Did you, write out some goals, have a game plan before you actually decided to quit?
Yeah. So what I did was I sat down and I literally have it right here. I wrote out like, what is the absolute worst thing that could happen? And I broke it up into bullet points of, okay, what happens if I can't afford my mortgage? Okay, I move out to my parents and now I have a cash flowing property. Cool. What happens if I fail publicly? Okay, I have to admit to like my family and friends that I failed. Okay, like that's not that huge of a deal. I'll take that risk. And I just went down the line of everything that could go wrong. And I looked at it and I was like, I can handle that. Like, that's not that crazy. I can handle that. That's worth the risk of it possibly all working out. So that's how I decided to do it.
And actually, it reminds me of a conversation we had. I think it was with Nick Cooley, who was a guest on one of the previous episodes. And, we were talking about the same thing about how there's so much fear around trying to work for yourself and trying to become an entrepreneur and doing this thing on your own. But a lot of times, the worst case scenario is that you end up like the vast majority of people in America today, right? Is that if I failed, if Ashley failed, what would we do? We'd probably just go back and get a job, right? Get a 9-to-5 and just grind it out like everybody else. And if that's the worst case scenario, why not take the risk, right? Why not see if you can actually make it happen? So, I mean, kudos to you, Grace, for having that courage in yourself and in your abilities to kind of take that leap. And I guess just really quickly before we move on, like, how has it been, right? Like you're almost a year removed from having to get up and go to a job every day. Like, what does that feel like? That's
so funny because the other day, Brant and I were at Home Depot when it was in the middle of the day and we're like, it's so crazy that we're not in an office right now. Like just running around, moving fridges from properties and all that stuff. But it's been awesome. I love problem solving, and real estate is just like a giant problem to solve with each deal and figuring out how to get it done and make money. And I've been able to do so many more things that I wouldn't have been able to do if I stayed at my job. So it's been awesome. A lot more stress, a lot more work, but it's been great.
And Nick Cooley was episode 109 for any of you guys that are wondering where that came from. Nick's an awesome guy. I had a lot of good times with Nick. So check out that episode if you haven't yet.
Tony, I have Daryl here sitting here listening, doing some work, and he wanted to correct you and say it was episode 109er.
Oh, excuse me. Yes, 109er.
Okay, so Grace, do you have a deal for us today that we could go in and do a rookie review on and just kind of give us the numbers on it, what exactly everything about the property, what strategy, things like that?
Yes, and I think I'm going to do my very first deal that we did.
Okay, awesome. So we're just going to ask you some rapid fire questions first, and then you can kind of go into the story of the deal. What strategy was this deal?
Burr strategy.
Okay. And was it a single family, 2 family, 3 family?
It was a single family home in Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Okay. And what was the purchase price?
$82,500.
And how much was the rehab?
$36,000.
Okay. And then you ended up refinancing this property. How did you pay for it? How did you fund the deal? And then did you refinance it?
Yep, we put 20% down. Everyone says you need to do Burr with cash, but like I said, we didn't have the full cash, so we started with a bank loan, and we refinanced it, cash out refinance 6 months later and it appraised for $185,000. So we were able to keep 30% equity in the deal. We refied $130,000, which paid off the purchase price, the rehab, and I think put $7 or $8 grand in our pockets as well. And then the rent, it ended up renting for $1,549, and I believe we cash flow around $350 on this.
Awesome. Congratulations. And on your first deal too.
Right. Can we just can we celebrate that? Because how long did this deal take you really quickly? Just ballpark?
It did take 6 months because we DIY'd the entire gut.
Yeah. But 6 months of your life, and you get back all of your capital plus $7,000. So you got paid almost $1,000 a month for doing the work. And now you have this property that's going to give you said $300 a month in cash flow?
About $350.
$350 a month in cash flow in perpetuity forever, with zero money left in the deal. And that's the beauty of real estate investing, is that you can get creative, you can put in the hard work. And if you do those things, you get rewarded. And 350 might not sound like a lot, but if you can replicate that 5, 10, 20, 30 times, that adds up. And especially if you're recycling that same capital over and over and over again. So just what an amazing job.
Thanks. And it's so easy to look back on it and be like, yeah, that was easy. Those numbers were awesome. But man, it was hard work. Like I said, we DIY'd literally everything. And I always remember the story of Brant came home one day and he must have had a bad day. And I'll never forget that he goes, we should just sell the property and cut our losses because of some unexpected rehab that he found. And I just remember thinking okay, he's probably being dramatic. It's not that bad. And then look how it ended up. So there were so many highs and lows, but yeah, it was worth it in the end.
I really want to go into the rehab portion, but first, before we do that, how did you find this deal?
Yes, so we went driving for dollars and I saw a for rent sign. So I called it and I quickly realized that it was an investor because he didn't know the house he was talking about. And I could tell he probably has multiple. So then I pretended to be an investor. Granted, I've never invested in my life. And I got him to send me a list of 30 houses. And we just said, we want to walk through your grossest one. And we did. And I guess Brant saw the potential. At this point, I still really had no clue what I was doing. And we negotiated a little bit. I was horrible at negotiating. And we bought it.
So driving for dollars is when you drive around, you look for vacant or distressed properties, write down the address. But how did you find this guy's phone number or even his name or who to call?
Well, it was a for rent sign, so it had his phone number on it.
That's a great idea, is even looking for properties that have the for rent sign out there that maybe the landlord doesn't want to deal with renting out the units or anything like that.
Just really quick though, I also like the strategy of asking, can I look at your worst grossest property, right? Like, man, like what a genius way to get that investor to like let down their guard or their defenses, right? If you can say, hey, I want your worst property, like whatever the one is that you hate the most, let me look at that one. So really, really good strategy to kind of break them down there.
And even just asking in general, do you have other properties too?
Yeah. Yep. I remember feeling like I hit the jackpot when he was like, oh yeah, I'll send you a list. And then speaking of the gross property, I have to say like it was bad, but it ended up being a great deal.
Can you tell us what you saw? Like what made this property so bad and what did you see in it that made you confident that it would still turn out to be a good deal?
What made us excited about the location was it was the only residential strip in a big, long road of commercial. So we thought eventually this will probably get bought out. So that's a great exit strategy. And then it was gross because I think there was like 15 people living in it, according to the neighbors, and it was just absolutely trashed. The backyard was like a giant trash hole. And the basement, I think animals had been living in it for many, many years and probably, unfortunately, never let out. So it just smelled horrible. People say it smells like money. It sure did.
So you guys see this, and this is like your first time doing a big rehab on your own. I think a lot of folks will go out and say, hey, let me get a professional who's done this, dozens, hundreds of times to take care of this big, hefty job. But you guys made the decision to do it on your own. So first, what prompted you guys to do the DIY work? And then second, did you have the skill set already to do that work, or were you guys kind of learning as you went? Just kind of walk us through those two things.
Yeah, so we decided to DIY again. We did not have the money to hire it out, so there was no choice there. We had to DIY it. And my partner definitely had the skill set. I did not. I didn't know anything, but I learned. And for him as well, anything that we didn't know how to do, it was just YouTube, ask, like figure it out because there's no other solution. Like we figure it out, or this property doesn't get fixed.
So with that process of like teaching yourself and kind of learning everything, do you guys still self-perform your work now that you have that knowledge, or have you started to farm some of those tasks out now in your current deals?
Yeah, that is like our biggest hurdle right now in our business is moving it away from us because so we can do multiple deals. We're about maybe like a quarter of the way there. We've started to hire out some things, but it's just really hard, especially when you know that you can do it better and cheaper. But then you can't, it's not a business when you're the one that's showing up, swinging the hammer every day. So that's what we're working on. And I'd say we're like 25% of the way there.
Well, kudos again, Grace, on like an amazing first burr. Sounds like you guys knocked it out of the park. Ash, anything you want to add before we move on to mindset?
Just when you were finished with the property, how did renting it out go? And are you self-managing? Do you guys use a property management company?
I self-manage, and renting it out went well. We tried to rehab it to like, this may sound counterintuitive, but kind of to the highest, not highest, but like a really nice rental so that we knew we could get the highest rent for it, because in Cedar Rapids, all the housing is like outdated and old. So we knew we would get high quality tenants with the really nice rehab. So that went really well. And yeah, I still property manage everything.
Well, Tony, do you want to take us to our mindset segment?
Yes. So Grace, we want to get into your psyche, get into understanding a little bit more how you've grown and matured as a real estate investor. So if we go back to Grace before that very first burr, what were some misconceptions you had about becoming a real estate investor? Some things that you thought were true that turned out to be false, some fears you had that turned out to be unfounded, just any misconceptions you had about real estate investing in general?
Probably that I would never be able to do it full time, that it would take forever to just get any of our projects done. And I think just scaling in general, I didn't realize how easy it would be if you just put your mind to it. I don't want to say easy, but how I could make it happen. And then, of course, like we talked about earlier, I was very wary of partnerships until I realized that those were definitely key to scaling as well.
Okay, Grace, are you ready for our rookie request line?
Yes.
So this is where you guys can call in at 1-888-5-ROOKIE and leave us a voicemail, and we may play your question on our show for a guest to answer. So today's question is from Joe.
Hey, Ashley. Hey, Tony. My name's Joe Gatlin. I'm just outside of Austin, Texas, and my fiance and I are trying to get into our first real estate deal. We have a good lump sum of money saved up, but we're both self-employed, so we don't have the money to show for it. I recently got a W-2 job to prove of income, but I have no credit. I don't have bad credit. I just never built my credit. My fiance does have credit. Is there any way we can use his credit and my income source to get into our first deal? Or what's the best way to start building my credit the quickest amount? Thanks, guys. Love your podcast.
So the first thing that my mind goes to is not even the credit question, but finding an investor who has a ton of properties and is willing to seller finance them. If you've got a big chunk of money and you can put up a good down payment, that's a pretty good argument to have towards a real estate investor who wants to sell easily and make even more money off some interest to another investor. So that's the route that I would take.
Grace, what would be your advice to approach somebody even with a seller financing option?
So I would definitely look for investors that have multiple properties because maybe they're a little more experienced and have dealt with seller financing. Again, you could look for pulling lists, calling for rent signs, calling for sale signs until you find the person. And then maybe even shooting the first offer for seller financing and just really figuring out what they're looking for out of the sale of their house. If it's a certain purchase price, then work around that. If it's a super easy sale, pitch to them how you can make the sale super easy, super short inspection, as is, or whatever. And just really figuring out the emotions of the seller and creating your pitch around that.
Awesome. Another piece of advice for Joe, too, is, Grace, how you had mentioned, too, going on the commercial side of lending and going there and partnering with your fiance and using both of your resources and getting the commercial loan. So if it's a good enough real estate deal and the numbers work, the bank is going to look more at the deal than your actual personal finances, as we went over earlier. So I think that's a great example there. Also, a quick way to build your credit is to open a credit card and just charge things onto it monthly, but pay it off in full using that credit card to build that credit.
And just one thing to add on to that too is that there's always the option of hard money as well, right? Like if you can find a hard money lender, they're not going to look at your W-2 income, right? Like just like the bank that you use, Grace, for your deal, like they're going to underwrite the deal to make sure that the numbers make sense in the property, not so much you as the individual investor. So cool. Awesome, Grace. Wonderful advice. We're going to move on to our rookie exam. We need to get like some cool like sound effects or something when this comes on to, I don't know, maybe like a school bell or something. But Grace, are you ready? Are you ready for the exam?
Yes.
All right. So just so you know, this has a pass rate of 0. Everybody has failed. No, I'm totally kidding. Right. It's just, there's no right or wrong answer here. But question number 1 is, what is one actionable things rookies should do after listening to your episode?
I think writing down worst case scenarios to whatever it is they're contemplating doing and spelling out what could happen, how would I deal with it, and is it worth it?
Okay, Grace, the second question is, what is one tool, software, app, or system in your business that you use?
Actually, 2 come to mind, Google Voice and creating a Google Suite account to get a customized email address, which I have found goes a long way in showing that you're maybe a serious investor or that you have your shit together. And just also Google Voice is great for when people are calling, it screens who they are, and you can choose to let it go to voicemail, to answer it. It's awesome. And then you don't have to give your personal number out.
Yeah, I love Google Voice because you can connect it to multiple phones too. So that if you're, not available, your business partner, will still get the same voicemail or the message too, so that everybody stays in the loop.
Wow, I actually didn't know that part, but I also love to use it on my computer and go online so I can message on my computer because I hate texting on my phone, and you can call on your computer as well.
All right. So question number 3, Grace, where do you plan on being in 5 years?
Within 5 years, we would like to have 20K a month passive income and be living on a sailboat. That has been a dream to eventually go and do that and live on a sailboat for part of the year. So we'll see if that happens. We're definitely on track.
Are you guys already boaters, or is that like a new skill you'll have to develop? No? Okay.
We've never been sailing, ever.
Okay.
Don't you know about all the sailing in Iowa, Tony?
So this year, we're going to go and hopefully this spring take like a sailing course and figure out if we like it.
Okay. Well, that is a beautiful dream. I love, this is one of my favorite questions, just hearing like the different ways people kind of plan their life out. But sailboat, I think that might be the coolest one we've heard so far. Last thing before we wrap up here, Grace, I just want to highlight our Rookie Rockstar. So if you guys would like to be featured as a Rookie Rockstar, get active in the Bigger Pockets forums, get active in the Bigger Pockets Real Estate Rookie Facebook group. You can always slide into Ashley's DMs because that's where a lot of these come from as well. But today's Rookie Rockstar is Ryan L. And Ryan says, finally got my first property, bought it with 2 partners. After the rehab, we'll be able to pull out all of our funds and put into the next deal. So they bought this property for $60,000 cash, spent another $20,000 in the rehab. The ARV is about $125,000, and then plan to cash flow about $130 per month per partner. So each person is going to bring down a little over $100. So Ryan, big congratulations to you for knocking it out the park on your first property there.
So Grace, can you tell everyone where they can reach out to you or find out some more information about you?
Yeah, I think the best place is my Instagram, which is grace.investing. You can reach out and find out more about me on there.
And Grace, you also have videos on the Bigger Pockets Rookie YouTube channel, correct?
Yes, Amelia McGee and I have been working on a short mini series that's been super fun, and we're only about halfway through it. So stay tuned, watch what's out there, and know that there's more coming.
Awesome. So if you guys haven't checked them out already, you can subscribe to the Real Estate Rookie YouTube channel and see the videos that they've already put out, and then continue to watch their mini series and learn a lot more about real estate. Well, Grace, thank you so much for joining us today. It was awesome to get to know more about you. And we've had a great time. You provided lots of value to everyone. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm Ashley at Wealth from Rentals, and he's Tony at Tony J. Robinson on Instagram. But before we close out, here's something from Bigger Pockets that will help you become an even better rookie investor.
Still you try so hard, cover up your games.